Alright, this is a quick follow-up video to answer some questions that were in the last video. One of them was, what's this? This looks like a VGA port. It's an HD15 connector here. But if you look at the back side of it, there's actually nothing hooked up to it. So it's just a dummy, I guess. There was mention of RS-232. And on this board, you can see it right there in the top middle, RS-232 external. There are some other option connectors on here, but none of the rest of them are labeled, nearest I can tell. There's 4 dip switches down here in the bottom, which are all in the off position by default. You'll notice that a lot of chips are socketed. I pushed all the chips back into their sockets to make sure they were seated all the way. The other thing is there's a couple of jumpers around here. Once again, they're not really labeled. I don't know what they do. However, oh look, there's a fuse holder right there. Boop. That's an interesting looking fuse holder. However, I was able to access the service menu in this thing. When you have a machine with only 3 buttons on the operator panel, well, it's touchscreen, I guess. But when you have a machine with 3 buttons, it makes it pretty easy to find. You just hold these 2 buttons here, the on and the standby, while powering the machine up, and that'll give you your service menu. Now, there are 2 ways that they current sense, or I should say not current sense, but they sense the power output of the laser tube. One of them is current sensing in the power supply, which I was able to verify does work thanks to the service menu. But there's something else that I found really interesting, and that is if you look down here in the bottom, the very bottom of the chassis, you'll see a little white square, and that's a Peltier cooler, or a thermoelectric cooler. And they also generate electricity, so if you apply heat on one side and it's cold on the other, you can actually get a voltage out of that. And so that is conveniently placed at the very end of the laser tube. Now this isn't the end of the laser tube that goes out, that's up here at the top, and you can actually see, or maybe you can see, I don't know how well you can see. You can kind of see it. If you look at the end of the white tip of the laser, you'll see a little brass disc, almost looks like a mirror. That's the shutter, and it's actually angled to a beam dump, which is just a black disc made of some interesting material, but it's a black disc over here. And so even if the laser is on, it's dumping the beam until you depress the foot pedal, at which point it opens the shutter and then the beam goes through the laser and onto the subject. So that's how that senses power, and what I needed to do was test that. And so how do we test that? Well, it turns out it's actually really easy. So I'm going to boot this up into the service menu, put you down for a second. And that's the service menu. And you'll see here that we have our current from the power supply. And then we have Peltier. And it gives a wattage. So these 2 numbers, or maybe just the Peltier, but I feel like these 2 numbers go together to actually give a real laser output power. And so, and I can show you how this works here. I'm not sure what VP means, but we know that VS, since it's in kV, is likely the output of the power supply. There might be some other math in there, but let's give it a go. So we'll go 10 watts, and then you hit the on button here to test fire the laser. And you can see 7.6 kV. I don't know what VP is. but it does work. Let's bump it up to the 30 watts full output power. And you can see 11.6 kV. That I've seen that say, there it goes, 18 kV. So it's been near 20 kilovolts. You can see it actually put out 1.2 milliamps of current. And so how do we test that Peltier cooler? Well, I got a heat gun here, and so all I have to do is point this down there, turn it on, make sure I'm getting it in the right spot, apply just a little bit of heat, and yep, look, there we go. So it stayed on for a lot longer that time because it actually senses something on the Peltier cooler. There we go. And now we're getting our 20 kV at 1 milliamp. Let's see, where did I put my laser glasses? Shouldn't have took them off. So now it's on and I want to look in there. Crap. Oh, duh. Okay. Now I got my laser glasses on for safety. You can see that it's still going down here. We're still at 20 kV, we're at 1 milliamp. Well, we got a much better look at it that time. Let's go down to like 10 watts. Alright, so it's still 20 kV, that's good. And it's really the same uneven purple distribution, but because the Peltier cooler is actually sensing wattage, even though that's really just the residual heat from me underneath it, it's not actually lasing. And the reason why I say that is because one of the tests for a CO2 laser is that you can take a piece of paper and you put it over the output side of the laser, like between the laser output and like the beam dump, right? And it should burn the piece of paper, and it doesn't. So at this point, given the evaluation, I am going to say that the laser tube is for sure shot. Now given down here, there is a port right here. I'm not going to reach in very far. There's 20,000 volts there, but that, I believe, is the gas port, so this laser tube can be serviced. That right there is an electrode. That right there is the liquid cooling. And then up here you can see we have the liquid cooling port here, the electrodes here, the outputs here. And you can see the thermal cutout switch. I'm guessing that's for over temperature. So, yeah. And then got our liquid cooling lines and all that stuff. So, that is my full diagnosis of this. Now that I can test it, right, using the service menu, I was able to make a reasonable conclusion. So, I hope you all enjoyed this look around this surgical laser machine. There's actually no electronics up here. It's just this. And then there's a tube here for blowing air out of the way. You can see the red alignment laser, the visible one. CO2 lasers are infrared light. It's not visible light, which is why it's ever so important to wear glasses. You don't even want to be caught with the radiation, with the scattered radiation that comes off the side of this thing. You just don't want any part of that. But anyway, that's how that works. I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.